House of Representatives orders immediate stoppage of undergraduate admission fees charged by universities. Fire guards Lagos Plaza, burning down valuable merchandise, shops, and a church. On the international scene, a U.S. impeachment hearing witness admits to quid pro quo in the Ukraine scandal that threatens to bring down Donald Trump's presidency. And in sports, Edo State closes pay gap between Edo Queens and Bendel Insurance. Aisha Faladay applauds Obaseki.
This is ANN News.
The House of Representatives has ordered the Ministry of Education and the National Universities Commission to immediately stop admission fees being charged by universities. A House resolution on Wednesday also mandated its Committee on Tertiary Education and Services to investigate university admission policies and practices. The House said many Nigerians are stressed when seeking university admission. Those fees range from 20,000 to 70,000 naira. House Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila has instructed the committee to submit its investigative report in a month. The Nigeria Governors Forum (NGF) is asking the National Assembly to hold a public hearing on the hate speech bill to ensure views of Nigerians were considered before passage of the bill. NGF Vice Chairman and Governor of Sokoto State, Aminu Tambuwa, made the suggestion while answering journalists' questions at the end of the forum meeting held in Abuja on Wednesday. He said federal lawmakers should respect the views of Nigerians on the bill. On the finance bill submitted by President Muhammadu Buhari to the National Assembly to increase the value-added tax from 5 to 7.5%, Tambuwa said Nigerians should show more understanding with the federal government. He said the governors would support whatever would improve revenue generation drive of both the federal and state governments. The University of Ibadan chapter of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, has described President Muhammadu Buhari's government as, quote, dictatorial. ASU made the remark while condemning the alleged directive by the federal government that its officials would move to campuses to begin enrollment of university workers on the integrated personnel payroll and information system. Chairman of University Ibadan ASU chapter, Professor Deji Omole, said the union cannot be harassed or intimidated by the federal government, which he accuses of having a penchant for breaking the law. He said the University Autonomy Act is set out very clearly for university administrators. He accused the government of breaking existing laws with impunity. He said the union refuses to be harassed or intimidated. Omole invited the government back to the negotiating table to discuss what he called the gray areas. Lagos has experienced another disastrous fire in just under 2 weeks. The Super Plaza in Surulere area of the city was ablaze on Wednesday. Valuable merchandise worth millions of naira was reported to have been destroyed. The plaza housed many shops and churches, including Fountain Hall, Dominion City Worship, Omega Fire Ministries, Textiles and Fabrics, Bureau de Chan, and Gift Gallery, and others. One of the churches was burned. Lagos State Fire Service and other emergency services coordinated action to put out the fire. Director General of Lagos Emergency Management Agency, LASEMA, Dr. Oke Osaitolu, said investigation conducted on the site indicates the fire resulted from an electrical surge in one of the shops before escalating to other parts of the plaza. He said there was no loss of life or injury had been reported. A non-profit youth-led organization in Lagos is helping bring out-of-school children back to school and off the streets. It started as an intervention program in 2015 and established a tuition-free elementary school for previously out-of-school and primary school dropouts in a local Lagos community where access to affordable government schools was poor. Reporter Deji Badmas tells us the initiative now helps more than 150 pupils with a growing academic and non-academic staff.
Most of these children could have been on the streets begging, hawking, or enrolled as apprentices at different workshops owing to the circumstances of their respective families. But the story is now different. thanks to the Street to School initiative.
I'm smart, I'm blessed. I can do anything.
It's the brainchild of Oluwatosin Oloye Taiwo. In collaboration with a team of young professionals, she started by offering free mentorship and career seminars to school children. That soon developed into a school support scheme which focused on enrolling out-of-school children in private schools and sponsoring their bills. But with more children needing assistance, the initiative metamorphosed into a fully fledged elementary school.
We had a long list of awaiting children that we couldn't get enough sponsors to help them back to school. So we just felt, instead of waiting until we get sponsors for those children, why not set up a school? We just couldn't wait because education cannot wait.
And it's not just these primary school pupils that benefit from the initiative. Street to School also assists some students in the secondary and post-secondary school level with free learning kits and registration for national examinations, as well as sponsor children enrolled in schools across distant communities.
Overall, looking at those that we've sponsored, that is actually close to, that is about 800 children for primary education and secondary education. However, with our back swap, this is an annual program that we also do. We identify with children from low-income, families, and we give them the basic learning materials. We give them bags, and that is why we call it back swap. We collect their old bags and give them the new bags. And this is what we've been doing consistently for some years now. And we've been able to reach out to over 12,500 children.
Children in the school are provided with free meals to help improve their performance. And for parents, the school has brought back hope for a better future for their children.
Well, as about the school fees, they see nothing like school fees. In the first instance, people thought that they are playing, but it will come reality that everything is normal. The school is very good, so their system of operating are very good.
But running a free school like this definitely requires a lot of support, and that is the only challenge now confronting the Street to School initiative, which currently depends on support from well-meaning individuals.
Where we are at the moment, it's not our property. It's on leased. It was leased out to us, so we are hoping that we're going to get enough funding so that we have a space of our own and we can open our doors to every child. Education is a powerful tool that we can use for the development of any nation. Okay, fine, the government is supposed to do all of this, but the government cannot do everything, and that is why as an NGO we are doing this. We are helping what the government is doing.
It's a very demanding calling for Oluwatosin and her team, who must always raise funding not only to sponsor the children at the school, but to also pay the teachers. But it's something she's always happy doing.
Coming up, African news. Somalia now classified as one of the countries most affected by global warming. And later, international news. A witness in the ongoing U.S. impeachment hearings admits there is quid pro quo in the Ukraine scandal rocking the White House.
Today, title reach for me to settle blessing. Blessing for you. When this girl first got this my shop called network. Now so on top of NTF 4G phone. Now this girl put it press. I provoke. No, it's short. It reach what time, eh? The ambulance make her tell her to make she mash her at. Come out from my shop. And later I come realize say this girl go snap am. Put her for inside internet. They take her to adverts. Now I make customers that they come with my shop. Blessing, I want make you help me manage my shop now.
Maremo, but I think Nami and Blessing start work the same time.
Now you and Blessing start work the same time. Blessing, you better start with a T-shirt for top of your 4G MTN phone.
Business makes sense on top super fast and reliable MTN 4G. Join MTN, make you enjoy double data.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to African stories. Extreme droughts, heat waves and floods have qualified Somalia as one of the countries worst affected by global warming. The United Nations says more than half a million Somalis were affected by recent flooding in South Somalia and more than 2 million are food insecure. Scientists and food safety experts say the climate shocks are not only destroying Somali crops and livestock, but also increasing the levels of toxins in the staple foods like maize, sorghum and wheat harvested there. A study conducted on Somali crops by Belfast Queen's University and published earlier this year found the levels of aflatoxin B1, a toxin linked to development of liver cancer, are dangerously high compared to European Union levels. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization has not conducted its own study on the problem, but Emma Woomer and FAO food nutrition experts agreed with the role of climate shocks and high levels of aflatoxins. Egypt has issued dollar-denominated Eurobonds worth $2 billion to cover parts of its $5 billion 2019-2020 budget. The Finance Ministry said in a statement on Thursday. The country's finance ministry said in a statement on Thursday, subscription orders exceeded $14.5 billion within 5 hours of the issuance announcement. Reporter Yozer Hakim has the story.
Egypt's $2 billion Eurobonds have been 7 times oversubscribed, attracting $14.5 billion in requests. The latest Egyptian Eurobonds had a maturity of 40 years, the longest in the Middle East and North Africa.
This reflects the strong confidence in the Egyptian economy and a good forecast for the next 40 years, which is unprecedented here. But this is supported by strong numbers such as drop in inflation, the gradual strengthening of the Egyptian pound, as well as high economic growth levels. Also, the interest rates are very attractive compared to Europe, where it could reach 0% in some cases.
This is the third bond release in 2019. Bonds have been one of the tools to finance economic reforms and social security projects.
The government announced a host of social protection programs that include a new healthcare system that will include all Egyptians. Part of the funds will also go into covering the expenses in the state budget to reduce deficit.
Egypt's foreign debt has now exceeded $110 billion, up from $106 billion in the first quarter of 2019. However, Egypt's total debt is still in the safe zone of about 35% of GDP. The government has announced that it will enter the bond market again soon. It is planning to issue another $3 billion worth of Eurobonds by June 2020.
Eastern Africa's Regional Climate Monitoring Center, ICPAC, has issued a warning over the possibility of heavy rainfall across the region at the end of the week. The agency has called on people to be vigilant for flood risk. ICPAC says heavy rainfall is expected on Friday in some parts of the region, including northwest Somalia, some parts of Djibouti, central southern Ethiopia, western Somalia, western Kenya, central Tanzania and Rwanda. Kenya's meteorological agency said in a tweet, heavy rainfall is expected in some parts of the country in nearly 10 counties. Some areas are said to have already been receiving higher than normal rainfall. The Kenya Red Cross said in a tweet, 3 landslide incidents have occurred in central Kenya, although there have been no reports of casualties. It added that heavy rainfall and flooding have affected areas across Eastern Africa since July. The rain intensified in October. A game-changing mobile application which utilizes the collective purchasing power of local convenience store owners to expand their profit margins has been helping South African township shops to increase their business. The app provides a platform for suppliers or manufacturers to access the township markets, which to this point has been a difficult terrain to penetrate. Julius Courier reports.
Spaza shops are part of South Africa's township ethos. They carry basic items and are run from homes and containers. But owners face many hurdles.
It's actually quite difficult because, sometimes you need to have to order your stock, and you find that sometimes when you go to the warehouse, there's no stock, and that sometimes you have to wait for delivery, which takes longer.
Pamodzi has stepped in and is trying to create smarter businesses using technology. It has opened at wholesaler in Soweto and is training owners and transforming 10 existing shops.
We maximize the space. We paint it to be like exactly Pamodzi, so that it will be user-friendly for customers. And we put the smart system whereby there's no longer now writing down on a piece of paper when you need stock. We put the system where they need stock. I will be able to see that store X needs stock.
It's going to help us determine which products are selling best, which ones are selling less, to regulate our stocks within the spazas as well, to know what is suitable for a certain area and for certain customers. So a smart shop is going to actually help us regulate our entire business, and we're going to be much more bankable. We're going to be more credit worthy to the banks as well.
Spaza shops are trusted in the community. They are often involved in township activities and support their customers with credit in hard times.
We are looking at making electronic wallets where somebody wouldn't actually have to carry cash or a card, and then they can transfer from their wallet to the wallet in the spaza and open their accounts. We've got stock files for the people who want to buy in December, people who need groceries for their families. So we are willing to be innovative in what we're doing.
Pamodzi started small, but it wants to expand its network to enable 1,000 smart businesses across South Africa that will create jobs and grow the township economy.
When we return, international news. A witness in the ongoing U.S. impeachment hearings admits there is quid pro quo in the Ukraine scandal rocking the White House. And later, sports. Edo State announces equal pay between Edo Queens and Bendel Insurance. Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to international stories. The United States House of Representatives has passed 2 bills created to send strong warnings to China about human rights and also to support Hong Kong protesters. Dozens of student protesters remained holed up and surrounded by police at a Hong Kong university. The House voted 117-1 for the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, which has passed the Senate unanimously on Tuesday. But this does not sit well with China, which has condemned the U.S. Senate measure on Hong Kong. China has vowed to take necessary steps to safeguard its sovereignty and security. Chinese Foreign Ministry says the United States should stop interfering in Hong Kong and Chinese affairs and to move to stop the latest bills on Hong Kong from becoming law.
Beijing called on Washington to stop the act becoming law.
Hong Kong is part of China, and Hong Kong affairs are purely China's internal affairs. We're telling the U.S. to recognize the situation, immediately take measures to stop the bill from becoming law.
The Hong Kong government also expressed deep regret over the act, saying it's unnecessary and unwarranted. What is the act about? To begin with, the Act requires the U.S. Department of State to evaluate annually whether the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region exercised a high degree of autonomy from the Chinese mainland that it is guaranteed under the Basic Law. In response, a spokesperson from the Hong Kong government said on Wednesday that the one country, two systems principle has been fully and successfully implemented since the return of Hong Kong. Safeguarding human rights and freedoms is a constitutional duty of the Hong Kong government. Also, the Act requires an annual report from the U.S. Secretary of Commerce assessing whether Hong Kong is adequately enforcing U.S. export regulations. A real concern is that the Act threatens to alter Hong Kong's special economic status. It would allow the U.S. government to withdraw recognition of Hong Kong as a separate jurisdiction from the Chinese mainland. U.S. could then impose sanctions on Hong Kong and on individuals deemed to be involved in curtailing the freedom of Hong Kong residents. Experts are worried passage of the law in the U.S. could be damaging to Hong Kong, its economy and people, and for the business interests of the U.S. and other countries.
U.S. Ambassador Gordon Sondland testified on Wednesday in the ongoing Trump impeachment hearings in Washington, D.C. He confirmed there was a quid pro quo in the Ukraine scandal. Sondland said the president demanded through his personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, that Ukraine President Zelensky announce an investigation into Trump's political opponent, former Vice President Joe Biden. Sondland provided House impeachment investigators with emails and texts showing it wasn't just he and Giuliani pushing for the investigations outside government channels. Analysts say Sondland's testimony is the most damning evidence to date, directly implicating Trump in the quid pro quo at the heart of the impeachment inquiry. Sondland said Trump's senior aides, including Acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Vice President Mike Pence, and Energy Secretary Rick Perry were all aware that Zelensky was briefed days ahead of the July 25th call to commit to doing investigations. Bolivia's interim government has presented a bill on Wednesday that aims to forge a path to new elections and diffuse street violence, in which 32 persons have been killed since a disputed October vote. The South American country's two chambers of Congress are expected to debate the election bill today, Thursday. The bill would annul the October poll and appoint a new electoral board within 15 days of its passage, paving the way for a new vote after long-term left-wing leader Evo Morales resigned under pressure earlier this month. The bill is calling for, quote, a credible and professional election body in order to pacify the country and redirect democratic institutionality. Bolivia is struggling to create unity between Morales' supporters and opponents seeking to move beyond his nearly 14-year rule. Morales stepped down under pressure from protesters, civil groups, security forces, and allies, as well as an international audit that found serious irregularities in the election count and cast doubt on his announced outright victory. An interim government under conservative former Senator Johnny Inez has struggled to bring back peace in the country. Israel is moving closer to holding a third election in less than a year after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's main challenger failed to form a government. Benny Gantz's announcement that he would not meet a midnight deadline following Netanyahu's own failure to put together a coalition in October deepened political deadlock at a time of mounting security and economic concerns. Both leaders failed to secure a ruling majority in parliament in elections in April and September. Netanyahu, who has been in office for the past decade, failed to put together a coalition after the inconclusive September election. Gantz was handed the task by President Reuven Rivlin, but his 28 days to form a government expired at midnight. Up next, sports. Edo State government closes pay gap between Edo Queens and Bendel Insurance. Welcome back. This is ANN News and Sport. Edo State government has signed a historic agreement after approving equal pay for its women's and men's club size. The state government has announced equal pay for Edo Queens and Bendel Insurance in a landmark decision. The historic announcement closes the pay gap between its state-owned clubs in the Niger Women's Premier League and the Niger National League ahead of the 2019-2020 season. Mose Katumbu, president of DR Congo club TP Mazembe, is now the vice president of the newly formed World Football Club Association. Katumbi was among representatives from 8 clubs from across the world in Zurich on Friday to discuss the new FIFA Club World Cup that will be played in China in 2021. The WFCA will be headed up by Real Madrid president Florentino Perez, with AC Milan, Auckland City, Boca Juniors, River Plate, Club America, and Guangzhou Evergrande joining Real and Mazembe as the founding clubs. The founding members agreed that the WFCA will be a platform to channel dialogue between clubs from all around the world and FIFA. The first objective of the association is to ensure FIFA Club World Cup will be an event where fans from across the world can watch the best football, with the best teams competing for the only global club football trophy. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV.